completion. Dr. Peterson is a three-time graduate of Pennsylvania University, first from the School of Engineering and Applied Sciences, later earning his master's and doctorate from the Graduate School of Education. Presently, he teaches and co-teaches two courses, including the History of Women and Men of African Descent at the University of Penn. He also serves as a pre-major advisor. He is the proud father of 5 children: Nia, Jalen, Nicholas, Miles, and Quincy. Wrote 4 books, including Higher Learning, Maximizing Your College Experience, and runs 1 academic and cultural enrichment program, Ashe Academy. So please welcome to be with us, Dr. Brian Peterson. What's up, Doc?
Hey, how you doing? I'm really glad.
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Just had a session with Howard Stevenson and some high school and college students we're working with over the summer, so I'm feeling great.
How was that session?
It was really good, really good. Talking, trying to really cultivate racial literacy skills, building them up, and then we'll get into some activism, training, leadership development, as well as college completion skills. So, yeah, busy summer, but happy to be doing this work.
That's dope. That's awesome. And working with young people, and passing on the knowledge to them, that's always the bomb.
Yeah,
always the bomb. So appreciative. So we thank you for coming on today, and doing the work that you're doing. So the people out there really want to know, can you share with us your educational journey? Like, how did you become an educator? Why did you decide to become an educator?
So I landed at Penn in Philly, really because of Philly. I was coming from Harrisburg, and, I really wanted to kind of break out and experience Philadelphia. And I do not know for the life of me still why I decided on engineering. And so that was, in many ways, it was, every day just being in the lab, doing all of that. It was, I liked it, but I'm just like, do I really want to do this for my whole life? So I oftentimes would go out and tutor and mentor in different programs. And that's what really sparked the seed. So I remember actually one year I was the president of the National Society of Black Engineers, the Penn chapter. And then I think that was my junior year. And right after that, I went right back to leading the community service element of that program. Because I'm like, this was where my passion was, So I started working at Penn in IT after I finished undergrad, and decided to go back and get my master's, then got convinced to go and get my doctorate, and was really reluctant in doing that. But I started to see kind of student affairs as a wheelhouse for me to be able to do a lot of different things. At that time we had Ashe Academy up and running, so I was working with middle school and high school students on Saturdays. So I think, again, all these things really kind of led me to think about education as the core of community development, and being able to be a part of so many other conversations, but to always be able to really be around young people and just have conversations and dialogue. I always saw education as a conversation. I never really said, oh, I'm the expert, I don't want to hear what you got to say, I know everything, listen to me. But that's not who I am. It really is, look, I have some tools, I have some experiences, I want to share them with you. What you got? I want to also hear about your tools and your experiences, and let's build this thing that's going to ultimately benefit everybody, and I think the last piece for me that really kind of cultivated my educational journey was just being, part of a Black family that traveled down south every summer, getting to Philly, and then seeing Philadelphia, and just always having the same images, the same messages of just Black resilience through all this pain and disparity. But we always come out and we always come through, but yet these systems are always trying to figure out the next thing to hold us down. And I was like, I'm done. I'm fighting this for the rest of my life.
That's right. And I think what's beautiful and relatable about your story is, like so many people, and I think this is so important for educators to hear, you did not set out on a path to education. No. You weren't at 6, 7, 14, 15, like, you know what? I'm going to be a teacher. I'm going to get an education. Like, that just wasn't your path and your calling. So a lot of times, we talk about tapping folks on the shoulder, telling them to get an education. But another major part of that is the experiences that folks have working with other young people to develop the passion to engage young people And I think that that's so important because, you all this time and even really talking about all this money invested in the School of Engineering
Right,
and
right, right,
Applied Sciences. But
right.
it was your passion to connect and work with and pass on information and fight a system with young people
Yeah,
that got you into education. So I think that's amazing. So I think sometimes when we're doing this work, we look for students to say, "Hey, hi, I want to be a teacher,"
right,
and we
right,
know
right.
like that's not even a career that's
Yeah,
exposed to our young black students.
yeah,
So it's about giving them experiences and giving them opportunities to connect to develop their passion.
yeah.
And I think that shines brightly through you.
I
Now you've
appreciate
been in higher ed for 20 years at this point.
it.
Like go ahead with your bad self. So what has been the primary focus of your work in these last 20 years?
Yeah, so this is year 11 for me. No, I'm lying. This is year 10 for me coming up in Makku. But outside of that, just doing Ashe. This is year 22 of Ashe. So just being in these different spaces. I think for now, for the centering around Makku, particularly for this year, is just really going to be about presence. I think for last year being so challenging for students. So Makku, what we do at Penn is we are the Black Cultural Center. We're one of 6 different cultural centers on campus. Really trying to cultivate undergraduate student experiences, help graduate and professional students really get acclimated to Penn and leverage all the resources. We also do a whole lot with our alumni base and a lot with community partnerships, which is how I stay connected with Sharif and his work and just on down the line. And again, I think Shane, as you were mentioning, for me, the beauty of Ashe, and we actually had a really beautiful email thread a couple of weeks ago. We're trying to set up an Ashe reunion. And again, we have 22 years of Penn students who have come through to do this work. And they, some of them are doing nonprofit work, some of them are medical doctors, some of them are CEOs, but to be
Mm,
able to cultivate that network and connect them to the current undergraduates is interesting. My daughter is a rising sophomore at Penn. I was taking her to early Ashe meetings in the little baby carrier thing, right? And now she's going to be doing curriculum development with Ashe, right? And
dope.
it's full circle, right? But I think that's the beauty of Makku is that we're able to touch these lives in so many different ways and really just build these bridges to students, to alumni, to community partners on down the line. So again, but the main work for me, what really drove me to higher ed was research that I had done, I would want to say in my master's program, maybe even a little bit before that. But also it was informed by my experience as a Black engineer that the graduation rates at a place like Penn for everybody are phenomenal. For Black students, good, but not as phenomenal. But then when you move
Mhm.
out to other campuses, you're talking about general graduation rates around 59%. And then you could
Mm.
get, there are schools where you could have Black men, 10% are graduating. 10%. So every 10 people, 9 people are going to leave that campus with no degree,
And that's
right?
what I
And
was about to clarify. You
yeah,
saying basically you're talking about people who enter. Out of the people who
right.
enter, only 10% of them are finishing all the way through.
Exactly, exactly. So for me, I really thought a lot about what what does it mean not just to be retained and complete, but what does it mean to be great, right? And I know for me, and the reason why I sort of stayed away because we talk a lot about college access. We didn't talk as much about college completion. We're talking more about it now. But what I want to talk about is how do you have the best possible experience, right? How do you come to a place like Penn or go to a place like Temple or Drexel or USC or wherever and get every possible resource, get every possible program opportunity, study
Mm.
abroad, get the summer internships, get the summer stipends, have the faculty mentors. So I look at some of my Ashe staff cohorts, and some of the I mean, we have people who won all types of prizes and had experience. That's what they did.
Mhm.
They got all these connections. They did all this work, and it changed their lives, right? But had they come into Penn and really fallen into a bubble, and really not not really taking advantage of resources. And again, we sort of put the blame on them and say, oh, well, you should have, you should have. No, no, no. As an institution, how do we wrap around them and introduce them to these people? Because that's what happened for these young people, you know, who are
Right.
now doctoral candidates and PhDs and all sorts of things. But we wrapped around them and we opened up the doors and connected them. We didn't say, all right, y'all are here, figure it out, like you're on your own. You know,
Mhm.
that's not the way. And to me, that's the heart of student affairs work. That's the heart of student development. That's the heart of higher ed, particularly in a place like we have 11,000 undergraduate students. So it's
Mhm.
very easy to enter our campus and just feel lost immediately from day one,
Yep.
you know. And so we don't want to do that at Makku. We try to figure out, how do we connect, how do we link, how do we empower, how do we inform, and really how do we cultivate all the things, all the beauty that they brought with them, all the brilliance they brought with them. Penn is just the conduit, but we can't leave them idly just to sort of figure it out. Like, we want to help them and be very intentional about, what did you come to do? All right, you got to talk to this person. You got to do this. I'm going to connect you today. And that's what we do.
Got it. And that's what I was going to ask. What are some of the experience that the Makku Center cultivates with these young folks that are coming to Penn? Like, what are some of the
Mhm.
community experience that they get to be a part of?
Yeah, so our flagship program is called Robeson Cooper Scholars, named after Paul Robeson and Anna Julia Cooper. Really thinking about the multiple, talents and just amazing things that our young people do. So those two scholars and activists and entertainers and educators, like they represent the model that we have at Penn. So we really try to say, so with that program we get about 30 incoming students, and we try to develop them as peer leaders, so their light is shining on the entire community through the work that they do. And we work with them over 4 years and beyond, so I'm still linking with Robeson Cooper scholars that have graduated 10 years ago, and helping them do different things. But we also do a whole bunch of other different, one-off programs, a lot of partnerships
Mhm.
with our undergraduate student groups, whether it's Black Greek Letter Organization, pre-professional organization, performing arts organizations. We have a program called Sister Sister and a program called BMU, Black Men United. And they meet pretty
Okay.
much on alternating Sundays over dinner when we're back in person, just to really create, conversational support spaces across the 4 classes of undergraduates, and also bringing in graduate students as well. A lot of academic prep, different coaching and tutoring programs that we don't necessarily run and manage ourselves, but we work with people who are doing that to make sure that our students understand the value behind that. One thing that, I would say, particularly around Black and brown men, and this was my experience as an undergrad. I had a really good freshman year, got off to a really strong start. And then sophomore
Mhm.
year, got a little overconfident, and then didn't do as well as I thought I was supposed to be doing, but
Mhm.
also didn't want to ask for help, because I'm like, why would I tell someone I don't know what I'm doing, right? I don't want to embarrass myself. But then you dig that hole and you continue to embarrass yourself because you're still not doing well. So
Whoa.
yeah, so again, providing that wraparound and providing the message that, look, if you want to do well and you need help, you got to ask. You got to
Yes.
step up. But also, we're here. So we're not saying go out and seek people out. Like, we're right here next to you. So just let us know what's going on.
Yes, working to create that supportive
Yep.
community. Another thing that happens, right, like around college, you have all these young people sometimes coming from all over the nation,
Mm,
especially in a competitive environment like Penn,
yeah.
who literally are transplanted into a community that they've never seen or been a part of, right? So you got people coming from all walks of the world coming to the city of Philadelphia. Why do you think it's really important that students understand the community in which they're going to school in,
Mhm.
especially within an urban setting? Like, why is
Yeah.
that so important?
Yeah, and I think, Philadelphia is a specific narrative around being the largest poorest city, right? We're talking about Move, we're talking about Mumia, we're talking about Black Educator Pipeline. So we have all this history, right?
Yep.
We're talking about the president's house, right? And own a judge, like all of these historical elements are right here. Like, so the president's house, when you're thinking about Philadelphia being the place where the Declaration of Independence is signed, sort of the birthplace of freedom, right? We're coming up on the 4th of July. And,
Mm-hmm.
Frederick Douglass says, well, what is that to me? That's a Philadelphia story, right?
Yep.
And then you go down the street to Mother Bethel and you understand like the historical significance that's right here. That's why I'm so happy to teach the class on the Black history of Penn, because it's not the Black history of Penn, it's really the Black history of Philadelphia, with
Yes.
Penn
Yep.
being a player in that history,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so,
Mm-hmm.
understanding all that, you don't want kids to just be eating at Chipotle and be on Locust Walk, and that's their and going to a frat house for a party, and that's Penn.
Right.
Outside of, that's your 4 years of college, right? Like
Yep.
there's all this other stuff and all these young people, and being the largest poor city, right?
Mm-hmm.
So again, as an institution, what is our commitment? But also for our individual students, right? What can you do? And I think that's the fuel that I felt as an undergrad and even as a grad student continuing that work, to say, all right, if I can connect with just a handful of people, that could set the stage for something else. And they could be the change makers, or maybe I'm the change maker, so it was that duality, those dual things happening. But the worst thing is just to sit and just watch, right? To sit and wait for
Mm-hmm.
somebody else to do it, right? And so for me, it was how do I do what I know that I can do in the moment, and then try to figure the rest out as you go. So that to me, that's the critical nature of this work in terms of helping, particularly our students, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't want our students to have a very, very, locust walk centered Philadelphia experience and never
Yeah.
get to any other
You,
neighborhood.
you make a dope point though when you say that, right? Because universities generally are centered in certain communities. Um,
Hmm.
Penn itself being in West Philly, which would be
Yeah.
considered an urban community, or the school like Temple University, who's dead smack in the middle of
Yeah.
North Philly and some of the poorest communities in Philadelphia. But the students who go there, right, the university creates this experience that's so separate from the community which they're in. So to
Hmm.
have centers that say like, hey, you're here, you're going to college, you're privileged in a sense. Let's not forget the people around us, right? Let's not forget like what our experience or our movement as a person should be connected to. And that's
Right.
supporting and helping other folks that's connected to a larger movement. So I think that is dope that the Makku Center kind of gives students those experience, and also your classes give students that knowledge,
Yep.
especially a history of Philadelphia, which is hugely connected to Penn. Um,
Hmm.
and we know there are controversial things that go on with universities who plant themselves right in the middle of poor communities. One of the things that come up a lot is gentrification,
Hmm.
um, and how that affects the education system, or what's its connection to the education system. So I would
Yeah.
love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, yeah. And again, I think it's all really complicated, and really our current understanding of gentrification, Penn has so many other previous iterations of that through
Mhm.
eminent domain, through expansion of research spaces. So now, we're thinking about it really around housing, right? And really
Yep.
around Penn in particular, it's going to be around student facing housing, right? Whereas when you go back to old pictures of Penn, there's trolleys running right through campus, and there's residential spaces now, where now you have like blocks and blocks and blocks of campus buildings, but all those used to be houses, right? So
Mhm.
none of this is new. But I think when you're thinking about K through 12 education, you're thinking about neighborhoods. I mean, that, and I'm sure I'm gonna go back to the archives on the podcast, but it's just a whole conversation. Like you have to really blow up the whole model of funding, right?
Yep.
Because what's the point in funding, around real estate and property taxes, and then you flip the neighborhood so then people who could benefit from a better quality space can't afford to live in the neighborhood,
Mhm.
right? Like what does it mean to actually provide quality education? Like what is the cost for that? And then now you've got to figure out a different way of funding that, and then you could go back to white flight, you could go back to all these narratives that really they paint the same picture of, look, we want this group of people to have this, we want this other group of people to have that, y'all gonna figure out, how we're not gonna talk about it, but it's just gonna be that way.
Gonna be that
Right?
way.
And
Yeah,
and now the language is around property value, and it's like, oh, well, the property value, like, why did y'all leave? You know what I'm saying? Like, like, why when a black person moves into a white neighborhood, now the property value is going to be lower? Well, who set the property value? You
right.
did.
You brought that up. I didn't say that. That's your
Like,
rhetoric. That's your
we just
conversation.
we just trying to live. Y'all set the property value. So why did you do that? Why did you do that?
Yes, because we just try to live. So within that, right? That's an important point. What role do we think that universities should play as being change agents in the community? Like, what is their responsibility to the community?
Yeah.
I
So
mean,
I
they're
mean,
garnering billions of
right.
dollars.
Right. And it's no secret that, I mean, you can Google Penn's endowment. Penn made money during the pandemic, which I'm like, who's doing that? Right. We are. So yeah, so that's no secret at all. Right. So then
Mhm.
you ask the question, well, what's our role? What's our responsibility? I would say the first thing is to not, just because we got the bankroll doesn't mean we have the answers. Right.
Right.
I think as an institution who, if we say we're going to be committed to community collaboration, to community enhancement, to community partnership, however we
Mhm.
frame it, you've got to have
Mhm.
a actual partnership with the community, and you've got
Mhm.
to really figure out who are going to be the stakeholders, who should be at the tables. And really, it's not about us creating those tables either. It's about saying what tables already exist, right? And how do we step into those spaces to then say, all right, what can we do? What do you need? What should we be doing? Right. And just listening and honoring the commitment that whatever we say we're going to do, we do.
We do
You
it.
know, yeah. And then, then when you start to figure out, well, here's where we're leaning towards, now you can start to tap your experts. Now you can start to tap your resource base and really figure out the smart way. You can tap all these students who are coming in who say they want to change the world. Well, look, let's get to work,
Get to work.
and
Let's
I
do
would
this.
say, that the last piece to that point too, and this is something that, it's frustrating. It's beautiful and it's frustrating. It's, to live quality, we'll call it the beautiful struggle. But
Mhm.
Penn is so fragmented and there's so many things going on. So it's beautiful in that I could say tomorrow, or I want to start this thing. Cool. I'll start this thing. I can go out and raise money and start this thing. But then somebody else may already have the same exact thing, but it's their version of it, and they want to keep it because, hey, I started it 10 years ago. I get to keep it. It's my thing. We never talk to each other. We may not even know we each exist, or we may know we each exist, but we don't like each other. So we just gonna rock out.
Mm.
I'm gonna do me. We're not doing the best work, and we're struggling for the same resources. And this happens at Penn. This happens in Philadelphia. This happens everywhere. So for
Everywhere.
me, it's just, how do you, once you land on what it is that we say that the community says that they want to do and what we agree to do, how do you then build a comprehensive coalition that's going to, like, disrupt all this siloed ownership, all, like, let's just do great work to, like,
Yes.
set a tone. And that, that again, that's why I always tip my hat to Sharif for all the things that he's built and the energy that he puts into it, because he's like, yo, it's not about me. It's about the legacy, and it's about these young people who I can lift up to ideally do way more than we can do,
Mm-hmm.
in this current
Agreed.
version. And
I was
that's
gonna say, like, that's some of our struggle with building the Black
right,
educator pipeline.
right.
What we found in doing research is that the work is so segmented or siloed.
Mhm.
But like you said, like even within a university, trying to work with universities and getting their departments to talk to each other, or
Yep.
not knowing, like, oh, you had this initiative going, I didn't know this, or the politics of who owns the initiative,
Yeah.
what school is it in, or what
Yeah.
director has to come to the meetings, or if this
Yeah.
person doesn't get an email about it, they'll be offended. So
Right.
all of the things that you named have been
Right.
huge struggles.
And you
I'm in
know what I
getting to
don't have time for? What I don't have time for is all of that. All.
yes. You gotta get to the work. We just want to get to the work. We don't want to be about the
Exactly.
politics. We just want to get to the work, because at the
Yes.
heart of the work for us, it is to build a better future for those who are coming after us. So
Yep.
we just want to get to the work. Um, but we are finding that those silos and those politics are getting in the way. But I think what has been a beautiful experience for us, like I said, the whole beautiful struggle is like breaking down those walls and breaking down those barriers to be able to build these coalitions, to
Mm,
find more Black educators,
yeah.
to cultivate experience for more young Black children, to be in touch with children. So
Yep.
some of the stuff like you guys are doing at the Makku Center. So
Mhm.
building programs where that can happen and bringing people together who don't talk to each other or who don't work together to say like, hey, you got this piece of the pipeline that fits directly with this piece of the pipeline. Like, let's build, let's work together. So I'm with you, brother. We
Yep.
don't have time. We are like out of time in a sense, right? Like time's
Exactly.
enough. We got to keep working. Got to keep working. So a good amount of your work is centered around really helping Black students not just get to college, but really persevere through college. How
Mhm.
do you think Black teachers, or why do you think Black teachers play a very important role in that?
Yeah, and that's a great question, and I think I quote this often: "You can't be what you can't see." Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so and for me, as we were talking about educators, I think I got introduced to educators not through a traditional education lens, but maybe through sports and coaching, or through sort of Black history enthusiasts, people who weren't necessarily traditional, quote unquote. But I saw a power in them bringing a narrative that I had never been introduced to. And
Mm-hmm.
so to me, that's the value. And again, I think this generation is a little bit different because the pipeline has bumped up a little bit more, particularly when I think about the Philadelphia context. There's some stuff going on, but again, it's still not where it needs to be. But I just think for young people, to have a mindset of this person has the competency and the awareness and the knowledge, and they've been on their grind to be able to be in front of me as an educator, right? And
Mm-hmm.
again, I think a lot about coaching. I'm fortunate to be around athletes who have played professionally and are coaching, and just the respect that they command, right, when they walk into a room of young people. To me, that's the same respect. I would love to know, all right, who's this Black chemist, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who's this Black historian who's coming in, who's dropping all this knowledge? And I got introduced to these people through books, right? Through like picking up my own sort of reading because it wasn't part of school. So again,
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a lot of ways that people can make these connections to sort of these role models who, if it's not the person that you want to be, it's the person who has access to information that you can then pull from to say, now that I know this, I'm at a different level in terms of how I'm going to process what's happening around me, in terms of how I understand the world. And Black educators, I'm actually working with a doctoral student now on her dissertation. Um, Shout out to Deidre who defends her oral proposal next week.
Yeah,
Um,
David, do your thing, girl.
exactly, but this is her work looking at the racial socialization of Black teachers over a few different eras, and how they've
Mm-hmm.
always brought this additional awareness that, look, as the person in front of you, I've got to prepare you to have a conversation about Tamir Rice when that happens. I've got
Mm-hmm.
to prepare you to have a conversation when you get followed around in your store. I've got to prepare you as a Black boy who may be dating a white girl, like what that's going to be like, right? At some
Mm-hmm.
point in time, right? I've got to prepare you as a Black girl in a predominantly white classroom when you get to college, or when you get to high school, when you get into an AP setting, for example, and you are the smart Black kid, right? I have kids who get into Penn, and they may come from a predominantly white high school environment. They get into Penn, and these people who they thought were their friends are now saying, "Oh, you just got in because you're Black. Oh, you
Mm-hmm.
just got in because you play volleyball." And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
I just got in because I took the same damn test you did
Look.
and killed it.
Yes.
That's why I got it, right? And so, but Black teachers are going to be someone that these people can lean on, these students, to understand, how do I process this mixed bag of emotions, right? And how do I still go to Penn, go to wherever, and still feel proud, rather than have this person like disrupt my entire experience before I set foot on campus? And
Mm-hmm.
this happens. Like, people carry these things with them, and it's deeply disturbing to me. But
Yes.
if we don't build, again, I think traditional Black educator pipeline is a huge piece, but it's also just an overall village. Like, it could be a therapist, it could be a coach, it could be a music teacher, it could be whoever you have around you, someone in church, someone in the mosque. So again, I think that there are other ways where people are going to receive this sort of informal kind of life education,
Yes.
but to me, and again, the research shows, and Deidre's going to really tease it out in her work, which is going to ultimately be a book. So again, I'm always speaking this to power for Deidre, because I'm really glad that I got connected to her. But to be able to understand the stories of how Black teachers approach what they do as activism every
Mm-hmm.
single day, that's the difference. That's the difference.
That's a major difference, because they come with a different lens,
Yep.
how they engage our students, and as you so eloquently pointed out, how they prepare our students, all right, for the world in front of them. It's just a different kind of
Yeah.
understanding about what's needed, and I
Yeah.
think that raises to the point of why Black teachers are so important, not only to get our young people to college, but to build a network that young people can reach back and lean on
Yeah.
when they're struggling in college. And increasing that number only strengthens and increases and makes us a larger village of support for these young people coming
Absolutely.
after us, like most definitely. I know you teach a couple of classes at Penn. I
Mhm.
think when we spoke earlier, I know you were saying like one of the classes you teach is education in American culture.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
so what are some foundations that are laid for students in that class?
Yeah. I think, the big question for us is, what does it mean to be a citizen, right?
Mm-hmm.
What does it mean to be American? Who gets to define that? So we look at sort of the historical lens of how that has shifted, how that's changed. Now you talk about immigration patterns, and there's all sorts of things. We're talking about critical race theory. I have no idea why, because no one's teaching critical race theory. So it's just like, that's going to be a huge thing that we bring into next year, just because it's come up. But like, it never came up before. Like,
Yeah, let's
focus
dig
a lot.
into that. Let's dig into
Yeah,
that.
no, we
You're right. It's now a new
definitely.
buzzword, right? Like we have people talking about critical race theory who've never heard of it or read it, and,
Right,
and
right,
don't understand what it means. But
right.
now it's a hot topic. So how are you going to
Yeah,
engage in that conversation with your students?
yeah. I mean, again, so we focus a lot on critical race theory in our class as a construct, and we focus a lot on culturally relevant pedagogy from Gloria Ladson Billings as a construct, and really try to unpack those. But if you go a step backwards, when people don't even understand culturally relevant pedagogy, and as practitioners in spaces, again, when you're talking about predominantly white women, they're going to shy away from this because it's not in their comfort zone, right? And then you have some that are going to try to do it, and some that are going to do it well. So that's when they do it well. Gloria Ladson Billings says, look, it's called good teaching. I'm calling it culturally relevant pedagogy, but it's really good teaching. Critical race theory is this very specific thing that comes out of legal scholarship. But I think what people are trying to say is, we don't want to actually acknowledge truth,
Yep.
right? But they can't say that, because then that's irresponsible, right? But it's like, what critical race theory, I mean, the interesting thing about it all, the pushback against critical race theory is the exact argument that critical race theory is making. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's like, look, you all deflect, and no, we've got to have a conversation. We've got to have a conversation, and and you don't want your feelings hurt, but we ain't want our feelings hurt either,
Right.
and
And
our
all it's
feelings
doing is asking you to
been
look
hurt.
at it. You've been hurt more than feelings, been hurt, physically hurt, everything, emotionally, mentally,
Exactly,
you've been stomped out. Um,
exactly.
but all critical race theory is doing is asking you to take a look at the legalities, the legal system,
Yep,
right, that has been set up to
yep,
benefit a certain race, right, and exclude another. That's it. Look at it.
And the piece about it is, the interest convergence piece, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it's not in people's best interest to have their feelings be hurt, which is why they don't want to talk about it. But it's
And
like,
more than feelings, have their power examined and taken, right? Like
exactly,
that's what
exactly.
they don't want.
Exactly. And that's the part, I have to dive into McGee's work around some of all parts. But I understand that the premise, and I really do, I agree. It's like, look, if we and this is what I'll say this in a Penn context, but I also say this in sort of an American context. If we
Mm-hmm.
that smart, make a bigger pie. It's not complicated. Make a bigger pie. Like somebody was asking me the other day about, and this kind of goes back to the point around gentrification. It's
Mm-hmm.
like if we and some people are experimenting with this idea, but I haven't seen it too often. But let's talk about a concept called luxury affordable housing.
Mm-hmm.
Like why is that counterintuitive? Like it shouldn't be. Like why can't people who need affordable housing, why can't it be luxurious? Why can't they have a community pool? Why can't they have a balcony? Why can't they have nice, like with all the things, it's not going to say now we're going to come to you in your mega mansion and take nobody's taking your mega mansion. We're
Yeah.
just going to build better housing rather than build little like housing that you're going to want to tear down in 50 years by eminent domain. Like
Yep.
we've seen this already. Like we know what's going to happen. Why can't we do something different? We can't do something different because, and they won't say it, but I'm going to say it, Black
Say it.
lives don't matter,
Nope.
right? They've never mattered,
Nope.
right?
If
And which is
you
why
if you
we
are
go,
black, if you are poor, then you are undeserving. Right?
right,
Like that is the
right,
narrative that is
right,
told. If you are
right,
black and you are poor, you are undeserving. And no, make no never mind about how you like. We have no control over being black, right?
yes,
But make no never mind about how I got poor, right? Like how I'm in a system
right,
that intentionally, right? Talk about critical race theory in a system that intentionally, right? This is intentional. Keeps me down and keeps me poor or creates barriers for me to reach this American dream. None of that
exactly.
matters. If I am black and I am poor, then you know what? You're undeserving.
Yep, yep.
And that's the narrative, and more than the narrative, it's the
It's the
action.
reality.
Yes, that
It's
is supported by straight actions.
yes, and it's always been in the American context. So where that's clear. Like if you're an historian, if you're a sociologist, if you're a medical practitioner, right? You look at that data set, it's all clear. So now we're trying to do something about it, but when you try to do something about it, then you get Tulsa, right? Now we
Yes.
mad that you did something about it. Why are you mad that we did something about it, right? So
When
again,
I'm over here just minding my business,
yes,
trying to
yes.
be great.
So there's a lot, and again, this is why people don't want to talk about critical race theory, because I really want to know why were y'all so mad that you destroyed this whole town.
Yep.
I'm seeing the clip on Amber Ruffin's show about there are I feel like there was at least 20 on the screen of black cities and black towns that were put underwater.
Yep.
Why were y'all that mad that that's what you did, right? And so we got to talk about all of that, because if we can't talk about where that stuff is coming from and how we move forward, then we're not going to move forward, and then we're all going to be sitting here waiting for the next time you get mad. And we saw the next time y'all got mad when this man had his knee on this man's neck, right?
Yep.
And people are yelling at him like, you gotta get off this man's neck. And you look at those pictures and he has no emotion. It's like, look, I've seen that before,
Yep.
right? I've seen that, and then y'all go and storm the Capitol
Because y'all mad, right?
January, because
Because you're
y'all
mad.
mad,
So
because you
we
mad.
know what happens when you guys
Why
get
you
mad.
mad?
Like we know.
Why you
But
mad?
you ask the pertinent question, why are you mad? What is it? It's that bad that you want to kill me and destroy everything I have?
Right.
Like my prospering threatens you in some kind of way. But some
Right.
of it is based on, again, when we talk about racism. You
Mhm.
just don't want me to prosper just because I'm black. Like that, it's a lot of it is tied just that simple into that complex situation, but you can't give any other reason besides that. And
Yep.
that's an interesting point. And I think
Mhm.
what you drove home by connecting the two is like Tulsa, right, is a larger issue, right?
Mhm.
George Floyd is an individualized issue that
Yep.
became larger, but people are experiencing the "Why You Mad" syndrome every
Mhm.
single day. I'm
Yeah.
just here being black and being great. You mad? I say the wrong thing to my white boss. Now I got to get fired. I say the
Mhm.
wrong thing to a police officer. I seem too knowledgeable or too
Mhm.
assertive. Now I got to get beat up and
Right.
beat down or
Right.
shot and killed because I'm unarmed. But
Mhm.
again, the question still hangs. Why are
And
you
if,
so
if you
mad?
are armed, why are you armed? If you're legally armed, you can't have
Mhm.
that either. So
Right.
yeah, yeah,
Within my legal bounds, right? Within my no,
right,
you can't.
right,
Why?
right.
But you make the that's an excellent question. Why you so mad? And then
Yeah,
when y'all get mad, we know what you like to do. The election didn't go our way. You know, we taking the government back. Are y'all
right,
really? But
right,
again, we mad every other 4 years when the person we don't want don't get put in office.
right,
Everybody storming the Capitol, right? When you talking about living in America, this is just the political dynamics that happen. That happens.
right,
Our people, your person you like don't win all the time. Our person we don't like win all the time. That's
right,
democracy. That's
right,
that's the world we exist in.
right.
But child to get mad and stage an insurrection. But again, we know what that comes from, right?
We
White supremacy, like we are supreme. So
right.
what I say goes. I'm in a world that tells me that.
Yeah.
So in your class to discuss, right, like what
Mm-hmm.
it means to be American.
Mm-hmm.
We know what education and how it indoctrinates us to think about what
Yeah.
it means to be an American, and how it reinforces racism,
Yeah.
how it reinforces white supremacy. But like this is why you get big mad and you feel like I'm gonna kill you just because I have the power to, right? This country actually like enables me to do that.
Yes.
And
Yes.
again, like even to go to deeper stuff, right? We got a brother who lost his NFL job just for like, I'm gonna kneel in protest. I ain't bothering nobody. I'm over here minding my business, like literally
Yep.
minding my business. But because white people hate to see it,
Mm-hmm.
this brother gotta go. No, we're not. Nobody's kneeling during the anthem. How you gonna tell people what they get to do during a song that get played?
Right.
Of American symbolism. But
Yep.
Brian, you done got me up. Got me riled up. Talk about this because it's a great question, right? Why
Yeah. Yeah.
why are you so mad?
Yeah.
Why are you so mad? And
And
then
that's
your
and that's
anger enrages you to destroy and kill people.
mhm.
Why are you so mad?
Yeah, but that's why we, frame the class education in American culture, because again, that this idea, this American concept, it really plays on notions of liberty and freedom, but for who and when, and I think when you think about education as a system, and then how it could disrupt, or it
Mhm.
could be it could be a part of the indoctrination, it could be a part
Right.
of the subordination. So we look at curriculum, we look at the school to prison pipeline, we look at the percentages across the board. Yeah, it's a very instructive experience. We bring in a lot of guest speakers. So yeah, I'm really we've been on hiatus for a couple of years, but I co-teach that class with Charles Adams, who's the head of Lion Story. So I'm really thankful that we were able to get that back on deck for this coming year.
And I think that's dope. I think that's amazing. And I think that that's what folks need. They need that kind of political education.
Yep.
They need that kind of like wiping and erasing of that American indoctrination so that we can be talking about facts and truth and not
Yep.
training you to perpetuate a system that's tied to marginalize people and bring them down.
Yep.
But with that, I think what's important to, and let's switch topics a little bit, to teacher
Mm,
preparation, because I
mm,
know you do some work around teacher prep.
mm.
What do you think is absent from those schools of educations, and why universities is struggling to do a good job with preparing teachers to come out and teach in urban communities or teach Black children?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot there. I mean, it's interesting that the conversation around critical race theory now in its current form, I mean, it's been a previous conversation just around not wanting to talk about culture, right?
Mhm.
And not feeling comfortable naming something, and really, talking about, to me, I view education as community, as village, right? And so people say, "Oh, I'm not trying to be, a social worker in school, yada yada yada." I'm like, well, I don't really like. Yeah, there's a lot of things I do as a parent that I'm like, I ain't really signing up for all of this, right? But
Right. Yeah.
but it comes with it. And as an educator, you are effectively going to be that child's parent, particularly for the younger kids. Like, you're going to be that child's parent for 6-7 hours in the day, so you
Seven,
gotta
eight. Yes.
deal with it. So part of it too is building different structures to say, well, what other supports do we need, right? But it's a whole big ecosystem, particularly
Mhm.
when you're dealing with historically underserved schools and communities where you've got a lot of unaddressed trauma that it's not even that it's unaddressed, it's like nobody even thought to ask the questions, right? People are
Mm.
like, look, this is oh, this has always been like this. Well, is that good? That's not good,
Not
right?
good.
So you've got to have this comprehensive question. And when you think about, oh, well, we're going to have a cultural workshop, nobody said have a cultural, like, no, we're dealing with culture like, you start there, you end there. Content is going to be, to me, and this may be an unpopular opinion, but content in some regards is going to be secondary. It's like, look, we're building a village. If I could teach you computer science, maybe I used to know it, but at the end of the day, if I'm connecting with the Black and brown boys in the space in a particular way,
Mhm.
whatever I teach them is going to be a value add. It's like, now we're all in this community, and I'm talking about leadership, I'm talking about life. And
Yep.
if we talk about auto mechanics, if we talk about computer science, if we talk about history, I'm good. I can talk. I can't do the auto mechanics part. I'm not even going to try to claim that. But we can watch some YouTubes and we can
Yep.
figure it out together. Or I can tap some brothers and be like, yo, can you come in and lend your skills to this? Because I've got these dudes and I've got their attention. And to me, like, the schools of ed, if you're not ready to step up and say, look, this is a life commitment, like I guess I would say it like this. When students come to me and I do what's called pre-major advising at Penn, and they say, oh, I want to be a doctor, I want to be an MD. I'm like, cool, that's a life decision. Like, that's a lifestyle choice. In order to get through Penn successfully as a pre-med major, you're not going to have the same sort of party life that a lot of your peers are going to have, because you're going to have to grind differently. Engineering is the same. You've got to grind differently. I think education, to be an educator, is not so much your undergraduate grind, it's your life grind.
Yep.
That grind, that commitment, that compassion has got to be different. And if your school's not telling you that, they're setting you up for failure. You can't come through and be like, oh, I wanted to be an educator because you get summers off. Next,
No.
next,
Nope.
next,
Nope.
next. Because you may get summers off. You don't get nights off. You don't get weekends off. And you don't get summers off.
Yep.
So this is not for you. It's not for you. Right. And you've gotta be willing to do everything it takes to care for children, to care for families, to care for yourself. It's a lifestyle. It's a
Yes.
lifestyle.
I
Yeah.
love that. Teaching. It's a lifestyle, right? Like, that's just a tag, right? I'm about to make my t-shirt. Nobody stole my idea. That's a lie. It's mine. Teaching. It's a lifestyle. But I
Exactly.
agree with that 100%. The dedication and the commitment that people don't like carry that responsibility almost, or
Yeah.
see them as a part of like the village that the child is being raised in.
Mm-hmm.
Or I was cracking up when you was like, no, you can't just do this cultural workshop and like that's it. But there's so many times, I think we lost my brother, Dr. Peterson. Hopefully he logs back on. But I think there's so many times that I've been in situation where folks just want the quick fix or the quick answer to that, right? They just want us to, you back, brother, there you go.
Yeah. I don't know what happened. My bad.
Yeah, no, you cool, you good. I was expounding on like these cultural workshops where people want the quick fix or the quick answer, or teach
Mm-hmm.
me a skill to connect with children, where at the heart of that is like, I can give you these very like empty arbitrary things to do, but at the heart of it, are you committed
Right.
to doing that? Are you committed to connecting with children? Are you committed to, like, sometimes I would just be like, are we being human here?
Mm-hmm.
How do I connect with kids? Or like, how do you develop such good relationships? I talk to them, like, but I want to talk to them, right? Like, I like them.
Yeah.
I'm actually highly interested in what they got going on in their lives. Like I'm being nosy with a purpose. Like I want
Right.
to know you. I
Right.
want to know what you have going on. Or, oh, you spend your lunchtime with them. Yeah, I would eat
Yeah.
with my family. I eat with my kids. Like that's at home, right? Like with my own kids. Like that's when we spend time
Exactly.
talking and like kind of going through the day. Like we eat together, we break bread together. Like it's more than just like it's number one, the Black community, it's a ritual. Like we break bread together. That's how you show love and respect for somebody. You know, when you don't like somebody, they can't come to the house. They ain't eating at my table. But when you love people, you like people, like that's a ritual. So yeah, I go eat with the kids. I want to get to know the kids.
Yeah.
But I think we make a good point in terms of if people don't have that heart in them, if you don't have that commitment, if schools of ed really aren't designing classes and workshops around really examining what it means to be a teacher or to be a part of somebody's village in the community. And even we keep using this word urban,
Yeah.
but for me, teaching Black children,
Yeah.
teaching in low income cities,
Yeah.
like if you're not going to be dedicated to being a part of the solution for those young people or being a part of their village, don't come here.
Yeah, like we've got to address this situation, not your idealized notion of education. Like that, we're not here for that.
Yes. And I think the idealized notion of education sometimes is like, I'm going to go teach and save those young Black minds.
Right, right,
Um,
right,
but what you teaching them?
right.
Um, what are you teaching them? That's that
Mm.
American kind of indoctrination.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
you know, brother, when they meet people like you and me, and then we send them back, and they challenge, then they get mad. Then the suspension rates go up, right? Then they get kicked out of class. Because why are you so mad? Okay,
right.
that is the question of today. Why are you so mad? To the point where you want to remove a child from an educational setting. Why are you
Right,
so mad? So,
right,
but yeah, I definitely think that schools of education need to do a better job beyond the content. And we definitely need quality teachers, right? You want people to be able to come out and do quality teachings, to be expert in their content. Like you
mm,
want all of that. But I think you make a great point about inserting stuff in schools of education where people really understand the fullness of teaching
right,
being a lifestyle. I think
right,
that's big. That's
right.
huge. Do you have any changes that you would suggest?
That's a whole
Like
other
in
podcast.
curriculum? Yes, you got like 9 minutes left. You like, girl,
Yeah,
that's a whole nother
and
show.
it's funny. Sharif asked me the other day if I because I had started writing at the outset of the pandemic. I was writing some stuff on Medium, and then life got complicated, so I kind of slowed down. But I want to pick that back up. So I definitely think the pandemic introduced a lot to me of strategies, and as parents, I have 5 kids. My daughter did her first year of college at home. Then my 4 sons were all in different iterations of K through 12. And so I saw firsthand content. I saw firsthand relationship building. I saw firsthand just all sorts of struggles for everybody, for the educators, for the students, for the parents. I've been talking to a lot of parents. So I think, again, when we sort of look at the data points around who has access to different opportunities and different resources, where are the different struggles, how do we sort of just rebuild systems, right? How do we think about, education doesn't have to happen in a school building, in a classroom of rows and desks, doing these particular things that we've quoted as education. Like I said earlier, I was on a call with Howard Stevenson this morning, and we're watching clips on how Emmett Till, the case was reopened, and just picking up on psychological cues on people who were quoted in different things, and how white supremacist threads were kind of woven into the instructions that were given at the court case, right? That it's a pilot program we're doing, but I would say that conversation, I don't know if the students had as valuable of a conversation in their school building, in their school Zoom session this year.
Oh,
Right,
they
right,
probably did not. Nothing
right.
close to what you guys are doing.
And so, and the reason why we did it was we just decided to do it. Like that's the reason why we did it, is because we just decided to do it. So what else can we decide to do that can add value to school buildings, to after school programs, to weekends, to Saturday schools. That to me is the question around what would be my ideas, because we've got tons and tons of digital content, tons and tons of books, and tons of potential mentors, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who could potentially be traditional Black educators. But
Yep.
we just got to put all the pieces together and say, look, we've got to, every kid needs like a good roster of adults that they can name that are in their lives, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you ask your students to say, all right, who's a mentor, or when was your first Black teacher, or some iteration of that question, and they're talking about somebody that they met in 11th grade. What about the first 10 years of your life? And I
Yep.
have Penn students who I may be, when they get into my class, I may be their first Black teacher, period.
Mm. Mm.
And I'm just like,
Black
well,
male
what?
teacher too.
Yeah. And so you're just like, well, what else could have happened for you, where it may not have been a teacher, but it may have been someone who was sewing into you. And then again, you need to have like a dozen names. Everybody needs a dozen names. That
Yes.
to me is the difference.
Agreed. I think
Yep.
that spaces that you are cultivating with Dr. Howard Stevenson, and spaces that we're cultivating over here at the center
Mm-hmm.
with Freedom Schools Literacy Academy are the spaces that young people need. And
Yep.
if they're not going to get that inside of school, then it is our responsibility as a people
Mm-hmm.
to provide that, where we are providing political education to students, where we are providing support and networks and connections. Um, so a lot of times people ask, how can I be involved? I
Mm-hmm.
think getting involved in some of these spaces or creating programs for students. So even if you work within a school, start an after school club
Yep.
where children are connecting and you're bringing folks into the school. Some of the most successful people that I've seen in terms of making an impact on the school are those people who do the work that you do at the Makku Center. They have the connections to the community. So
Mm-hmm.
they bring people into the schools to connect with the children. They
Mm-hmm.
connect children to resources in their neighborhood. Because outside
Right.
of that 7 to 8 hours, you're going to need somebody besides me that you
Yeah.
can lean on or that you can go to.
Yeah, and to
Because,
that point, let me just insert this piece to that point, because I think it's critical, is that people need to be paid. People
yes,
people need to be compensated. So even if you're doing part-time after school program, or you're coming in a few hours a week, I make this analogy often. I keep it short because I know we're running short on time.
hmm
But I could drive Uber if I wanted to.
hmm
This summer I am driving Uber, and I'm not getting paid because I'm driving my family around all over the place to all kinds of camps and part-time jobs. So I,
yeah,
I could go ahead and sign up for Uber and get paid while I'm not driving my family around, and take my Zoom meetings in my car while I'm driving Uber, right? I don't want to drive Uber. I don't want to drive my family around. I drive them around because I love them, right?
yeah,
I want to mentor young people. And there are so many people who I have that have graduated at 25 years old, 30 years old, who are working the gig economy, doing whatever, and they want to mentor young people too. We've got to create opportunities to pay people. If I bring you in as an artist to do a workshop on songwriting with my students, don't do me a favor, get this $500 check, right?
yes,
That needs to happen across the board. Then we could do so much more. And I think the
yes.
foundations that are out there, funders, this is what we need to set up, because that opens up so many lanes to so many other opportunities.
And I think you make a great point. Because sometimes people do think liberation work should be free,
And it
but
should not, it should not be. It should
people
not be.
should be people should be getting paid
Liberators,
for their work.
liberators got to eat.
They definitely got to eat, and they have to survive. They have to survive in this struggle.
Yes.
So, and we're in a capitalistic society, yes. So people should definitely
Mm.
be paid. But brother, we are coming to the close on time. I just want to give you the floor for a few last words to our supporters, our co-conspirators out there watching.
Yeah, now I really want to thank everybody who's tuned in live, anyone who checks us out later on the playback. Just really appreciate the time and energy. I think these conversations are critical, and this is a critical moment. We didn't talk too much about COVID and learning loss and what the next year has in store for us. But I would encourage people to continue to be safe, because we still not past this thing as you get back to interacting. But again, keep education top of mind. However you frame it, whether it's formal, informal, whatever the case is, we need to be sowing into young people and sowing into ourselves. Get your own book list together, get your own conversation group, get your own support group. This past year, the things that I've been able to do alongside of my day-to-day work have been therapeutic. So I would look at education as that lens for you, as well, just to kind of pour in and continue to do the work.
Yes. Well, thank you, Doctor. We just
Thank
appreciate you joining us. This has been an excellent conversation. I'm glad. I'll love to bring you back in the future for another show with your wealth of
Absolutely.
knowledge. But
Absolutely.
definitely good luck to you. And again, I appreciate all my people watching out there. Join us again next Thursday live at 12 for another show of Building the Black Educator